Good evening. Good evening, councillors, members of the public. We don't yet have members of the press here, but I'm sure they will arrive. Welcome to our December council meeting. I'm Lorraine Young. I'm the Mayor at the town of Cottesloe and I'll be the presiding member this evening. I'll draw your attention to the disclaimer that's on the inside cover of the agenda pack that you can get from the front as you walk in, and also the rules of process under which these meetings are run. I would like to start off by acknowledging the Whadjuk Noongar people as the traditional custodians of the land where we're meeting this evening, and pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I have a few announcements that I'd like to make without discussion. I'm sure everyone will be aware and will have heard about the Sculpture by the Sea exhibition, which since our last meeting we've had the news that it won't be coming to Cottesloe for the 2025 summer. That is hugely disappointing. But we are grateful to the federal government for ensuring continued funding for the event to be held in Cottesloe in 26 and 27. So we're hoping it's just a 1 year break effectively, and that it will be back as a regular feature of the Cottesloe calendar well into the future. We will be considering tonight a funding request from Sculpture by the Sea Cottesloe to go towards the cost of administration so that they can be here and doing all the work needed to get the show back on for 2026. It's a modest amount that they've asked for, but it does provide the town and council with the opportunity to show our commitment to the event and to getting it back in Cottesloe and to stay in Cottesloe. We will be moving forward on our Cottesloe Village Precinct Plan and our local planning strategy this evening. I did want to thank our administration, our CEO and particularly our planning staff who have worked really hard to get us to this point and get us moving towards a contemporary planning scheme to guide the shape of our district into the future. We are constrained by state government policies, including their policies relating to infill, but by developing our own scheme and precinct plans, that is the best hope that we have of having some control of how we want to live in Cottesloe. So well done to our staff. This is our final meeting for the year. I would like to take the opportunity to thank our staff and all our elected members for the hard work that they do for the Cottesloe community. I'd like to thank the members of our community who take the time to engage on council business. I'd like to thank our local media for their work in keeping the community informed on matters of importance. And as we move into the festive season, I'd like to take the opportunity to wish everybody a very happy festive season and a very safe period, and we look forward to seeing everybody back in 2026. On that note, I'm going to move... Oh, yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, it's Sculpture by the Sea that we're not seeing until 2026. So, yes, we look forward to seeing you back in... Thank you, Councillor Sadler. Public question time. For those of you who are not familiar with the process, it is governed by our rules of procedure. When your name is called, if you've submitted a sheet, can you please come to the lectern and just provide your name and address, and if you're speaking on an agenda item, let us know what that is. Questions can range. They don't need to be on agenda items, but it's helpful if we know which one you're speaking to, if that's the case. And if you can confine your questions to a succinct question, it makes it a lot easier for us to answer. So unnecessary preamble and expressions of opinion. If you want to provide your opinion, we do have public statement time after public question time. So there is a screen here that will show you how you're tracking, we look forward to hearing your questions. So I'll start off asking Barry Johnson, if you'd like to come to the lectern, please. And because you've very kindly submitted your questions in writing, if they're substantially the same, we should be able to answer them at the end. So I'll get you to ask them all at once. Please.
Good evening.
Hi.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name's Barry Johnson from 100 Forest Street, Cottesloe. I've got 3 quick questions, and I do note that in your agenda at item 13.1.3 there's a thing about the Seaview Golf Club renewal update. But I'd like to ask a question on the lease. I've been told, along with probably 140 other people at a meeting, that the council has given Seaview Golf Club a 10-year lease extension. I'd like to know whether that is true or incorrect. That's question 1. Question 2, where can I find the results of the public submissions into the Seaview Golf Club? That I know that both my wife and I, we respond to that down at Harvey Field and also in Napoleon Street. And the third question is the council aware, and I'm sure you are, of the media article that was in the Post very recently, where City Beach versus Cottesloe, and big reference was to public facilities along the foreshore. We don't have any public facilities along the foreshore apart from underneath the Magic Apple and also Indiana, and to be perfectly honest with you, they're substandard. When we go south from Indiana, there's nothing until you get to Port Beach or to Leighton Beach. What does council intend to do, or what are they looking at for all those young families that now use down at where the Vlaming, or whatever it's called, that little area there, and that's a very well used area? Are you going to provide some form of public facility along there? And I also would be curious to know, when we as walkers, if you're in need of going somewhere, where do you go? It's an offence to jump the fence and go and do something behind a tree. So are you intending to look at public facilities further along, which I think the ratepayers of Cottesloe are entitled to, because 99% of the walkers are ratepayers from the town of Cottesloe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Johnson. That was perfectly timed too, thanks. Your questions, firstly, as regards the Seaview Golf Club lease, in September 2023 at the Ordinary Council meeting, Council resolved to provide in-principle support for a 10-year renewed lease to the club, subject to the need for redevelopment being addressed in one way or another. There were 2 ways that it could be addressed, either a redevelopment clause in the lease, or if we had advanced our exploration of redevelopment options, a redevelopment program would be incorporated into the lease. So we haven't formally given a 10-year lease extension, but we have given in-principle support to the idea, and that was designed to give some comfort to club members that council supports the golf course and supports the golf club, and subject to being able to resolve the terms of the lease and particularly redevelopment, it is the intention to proceed with that. So that's as full of an answer as I can give. Public submissions are available on, I'll ask the CEO to tell you where you can find them.
Yes, so the report on the submissions or the public submissions in regards to the survey are actually on the town's website. They're actually under the page which is dedicated to the Seaview Golf Club Redevelopment Committee, and that's been publicly available for a few months. So if there's any problems accessing that page, please let the administration know.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. And yes, we did read the article, City Beach versus Cottesloe, and I think it's quite a common sentiment that you've expressed about the facilities. Cambridge is a much wealthier local government than Cottesloe, and they have been able to diversify and be less reliant on rates income. And I believe actually their golf course is a source of considerable funds. Having said that, we do recognise that we need to provide what we can. We have got a foreshore master plan that deals with the central foreshore area that we are seeking state and federal funding towards. It is a beach that is used very, very much by people from all over the metropolitan area, visitors from the regions, from interstate and from overseas. It does seem a little unfortunate that the state and federal governments expect a small local government with a rates income of $11 million a year to meet the cost of servicing that prime, very popular beachfront. But we are doing what we can. Public toilets are very high on our agenda. When we consulted our community to put together our council plan, the need for public toilets was very clearly identified. Perhaps the CEO can tell us exactly where we're at, particularly in South Cottesloe.
So in this year's budget, Council has allocated $200,000 in order to look at and investigate an additional public toilet to the south of Cottesloe. Our engineering department are currently doing some investigations, and we'll be taking briefing council on the outcome of those investigations early in the new calendar year. So there is a provision in this year's budget, and the town is actively working to see if we can provide some additional amenities, particularly in South Cottesloe.
And I might, thank you, Mr. Scott, and I might just add, we did recently spend, I believe, $170,000, or that was the budgeted amount, to upgrade the toilets under the Magic Apple. And the toilets at Indiana, I think we've got cause for optimism that they will be addressed as part of a redevelopment that will be acceptable to the community. And we're hoping that that will be something that happens sooner rather than later. I believe they were repainted, but I know that doesn't, they were repainted recently.
Yes, that's my understanding with the current maintenance program, so yes.
I know that doesn't make it a complete, full fix, but hopefully that is something that we will get delivered as part of that redevelopment. So thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Gary Brockman.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, councillors. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to not so much ask a question, but just to make a statement. I'm here to support the submission by Tom Atkinson, my fellow owner and Council of Owners Chair. I'm talking about Lot 40, 22 John Street, Cottesloe. The owners were first notified as part of the general notice of agenda for this meeting. We received that late on the afternoon of Friday the 9th. The inclusion of Lot 40 in Plan Area F was made after public comment closed on the 13th of October. The proposed inclusion occurs at a most inconvenient time, the owners being in negotiations for the sale of the property. Lot 40 hardly forms part of the foreshore. The inclusion introduces uncertainties. As you can imagine, when you move from one rates zoning, not rates, but one zoning to another. Senior management in the council at a meeting Thursday stated that the exclusion of Lot 40 will not compromise the council's obligations to the current state government planning strategy. We ask that the mayor and councillors vote against inclusion of Lot 40 in Plan Area F.
Thank you, Mr. Brockman. I'll take that as your question, and the answer will be a decision for council, and we will be considering that this evening. Thanks. Mr. Mellor? Stephen Mellor.
Is this on? Yes. My name is Stephen Mellor of Graham Court, Cottesloe. I'm asking questions as an independent ratepayer. 10.1.3 Sculpture by the Sea. As mentioned at the end of the officer report, the town is in the provision of its in-kind support will be in addition to the 70,000 direct contribution, and therefore the 65,000 saving to the budget may be changed. But is a reduction in likely parking fees income also a reduction that might be expected in adjusting the budget? 13.1.5 Adoption of the local planning strategy. On page 936 and elsewhere in the attachments, it includes an outdated status of the Indiana development. I realise the report was written before the council rejection of the 5.8 proposal, but should not this be updated before approving the strategy for consultation? I ask elected members to withdraw point 5 of the resolution requesting the WAPC to additionally consider including 22 John Street in Planning Area F. Would not this be more than a minor modification allowed in point 4 of the resolution for the CEO to approve? I do not think there is good enough rationale in the officer report to justify the inclusion of number 22 John Street, particularly in infill numbers. Will not really be effective from what I heard at the forum. Is this not a breach of the accepted consultation process with the community? Would this not add to the public consultation fatigue mentioned elsewhere, but rather increase the lack of faith in the council's process and common sense governance? With the inclusion and potential subdivision of the site, would not this put at risk the tree canopy and open space so important to the council and to be in conflict with the GIS? CHRMAP. With the 5.8 Indiana proposal currently still in the local planning strategy, it's still in there, and this inclusion of a surf club storage shed near the Madura Rocks was planned, can the community be assured that the locating of this shed is in such a risk area will be properly considered should the proposal resurface? And it sounds tonight by saying there's optimism with the toilets that the Indiana proposal has not gone away. If the proposal is still in discussion with 5.8, will the 5.8 be made responsible in their building works for the CHRMAP management building and fortification works? And with regard to the Anderson Pavilion, has the licence agreement with the Magpies been agreed and signed? Have the whole year available hire days and hours been made publicly available? And are hire users of the pavilion covered for insurance purposes by the town's policy of its own? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mellor. They're very wide-ranging questions, and I'll take them on notice so that we can provide considered answers. You will be submitting them in writing? Thank you very much. Are there any other people here who wish to ask questions? Thank you. Well, look, we'll move to public statement time. And I have a form from Mrs. Yvonne Hart.
Good evening, elected members and staff. My statement is on agenda item 10.1.5, the final adoption of the local planning strategy. And I respectfully suggest that elected members do not endorse the officer recommendations to include 22 John Street as part of Cottesloe's final planning strategy, supposed to be approved tonight and forwarded to WAPC. Discussions on the local planning strategy have been ongoing since July 2023. There has been an online survey, community consultation. There is extensive documentation by consultants Ham Charlie. And throughout that time, extending the foreshore zone to include 22 John Street has never been mentioned. Although Council has delegated authority to the CEO to make minor modifications to the LPS, you must surely agree that this is not a minor modification. What are the possible implications? Could there be a hotel on the site? Where are the traffic management survey?
Mrs. Hart, could I just interrupt you briefly? Just the next paragraph, could you please omit that, because it is in breach of our standing orders in imputing a motive, an improper motive. So could you please either rephrase it or I know that you wouldn't intentionally do that, but
No.
the questions that you raise are could be taken as imputing an improper motive to members of our staff.
So you don't want me to talk about the last sentence in that paragraph?
You can certainly make that statement, but I would ask that you don't impute motives to the staff.
Okay, yeah,
Thank
point
Thank you.
taken. Yes, of course, thank you. So I just feel that the process is poor decision making, the process lacks accountability, the process is not fair to ratepayers, and the process is not open and transparent. There is no merit in considering the inclusion of John Street as part of the final local planning strategy, and I ask elected members to carefully consider this 11th hour change, and tonight do not endorse the officer recommendations. And Madam Mayor, in conclusion, having given you all a serve, could I just say to you all, thank you for your interest in allowing me to speak over this year. I've always been treated with respect and with dignity. The breakthrough this year for me is that we actually have live streaming. It's only taken 4 years, so good things come to those who wait. But thank you all. I would like to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I look forward to seeing you all again in 2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hart. I don't know, sorry. Thanks. If you just... Yeah, thanks. Was there anyone else who would like to make a public statement this evening? Right. I'm going to move through the agenda. I'm going to ask, I imagine that we've got quite a few people here. Sorry, yeah. I think there's quite a few people here for the local planning strategy item. So I will move that. I'll be asking Council to approve moving that forward so that you can be here to see how that goes. So when the time comes, I will be moving a motion. Attendances. We have no remote attendees this evening. We have an approved leave of absence. Councillor Heath is started her Christmas holiday early, so she is not here this evening. She's on an approved leave of absence. We have 2 applications for leaves of absence. Is that them? Is it just 2? Yeah. We have one from Councillor Wilinko from the 15th of February to the 31st of March 2025 for a family holiday. I move that we allow Councillor Wilinko that leave. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mason. All in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. Well done. And
Sorry, just I'll let you finish first. Sorry.
Councillor Bullbeck has asked for personal leave from the 17th of February to the 10th of March 2025. I move that Councillor Bullbeck be granted leave for those dates. Councillor Sadler, all in favour? That's unanimous, thank you.
Through the Chair, just for the record, we have an additional staff member that's not listed on the agenda, Miss Magna Damaska, who's training on the online videoing, so just for those people present.
Thank you, Mr Scott. Declarations of interest. Do we have any? Yes, Councillor Harkins.
I'd like to declare impartiality interest in 10.1.5 as some of the owners of 22 John Street are known to me, but I can vote on the matter with impartiality and on its merits. Thank you.
Any other declarations? Councillor Irvine?
Yes, the same declaration on 10.1.5 and also residents in the streets affected are known to me, but I can make my decision impartially, and also 10.1.4 residents are known to me, but I can make my decision based on the...
Thank you. Any other declarations of interest? Okay, thank you. So we'll move to confirmation of minutes, and that is in respect of the meeting on the 26th of November. Do I have a mover that the minutes, Councillor Sadler has moved that the minutes of the meeting on 26th November be confirmed as a true and accurate record. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Harkins. All in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. Now, we have no petitions or presentations. We do have Mr Nathan Stewart, who will be making a deputation in respect of item 10.1.4. So, Mr Stewart, the timer will give you an indication of how you're going, or the screen will give you an indication of how you're going for time. Sorry? Oh, yeah, if you put your mic, could you... Oh, just yeah. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Councillors and Town staff. My name's Nathan Stewart from Row Group. Row Group acts on behalf of the landowners of 108, 112 and 114 Forest Street, Cottesloe, referred to as the Forest Street properties, and also number 1 Station Street, Cottesloe, referred to as the Station Street property. With me tonight is Marcus Lemisier, the representative of the landowner. We've been engaged to make submissions on the draft Cottesloe Village Precinct Structure Plan and Scheme Amendment number 14, which is being considered tonight for the purpose of public advertising. Prior to today's council meeting, we sent a letter via email to the town's planning department and councillors. The letter details our submission in greater detail. In relation to Scheme Amendment number 14, this proposes to rezone the Forest Street properties from residential office zone with a density of R40 to centre zone with a density of RAC0, and rezone the Station Street property from town centre zone with a density coding of R100 to centre zone with a density coding of RAC0. We're generally supportive of Scheme Amendment number 14. The modifications to both Forest Street properties and Station Street property are supported. As per our letter, our comments relate primarily to the development standards set out in the draft precinct structure plan. In relation to the Forest Street properties, we have 2 concerns. Firstly, the stated intent for the Forest Street sub-precinct does not adequately reflect the land use permissibility proposed by the draft structure plan. It omits any reference to non-residential uses. There's already a heavy presence of non-residential uses within the sub-precinct. In relation to the Forest Street properties in particular, there's already a development approval over the site for a multi-storey office in this location. The second issue is the proposed vehicle access provision doesn't consider how many of the properties facing Forest Street already have vehicle access to Forest Street. The development standard should be worded to permit vehicle access to remain in a similar manner to the current streetscape. And most of the lots are 12 metres wide on Forest Street. So the development standard could be worded in such a way to permit new vehicle access where lots have a minimum frontage of 12 metres, and this would preserve the existing streetscape. In terms of modifications that we're asking in relation to the development standards affecting the Forest Street sub-precinct, we'd like the intent in the structure plan to refer to non-residential uses as per our proposed wording in our letter. And secondly, a second modification is to modify the vehicle access and parking development standard set out in Table 7, the Forest Street sub-precinct planning controls in the structure plan to allow new vehicle access from Forest Street where the street frontage to Forest Street exceeds 12 metres. And the exact wording of what we're proposing or requesting Council to include ahead of advertising is included in our letter. In relation to the Station Street properties, our primary concern regarding this property is the setback requirements in Table 8, the Station Street sub-precinct planning provisions in the structure plan. Our analysis of the proposed setback requirements is detailed in our letter with a graphic. The setback requirements on the first and to third floors is acceptable. It has a nil setback to all boundaries, being the podium areas. The setback requirements to the fourth storey, whilst possible, it's still heavily constrained. The development potential yield for this site is only 178 square metres. On the storeys between the fifth and eighth storeys, it's severely constrained to the point there's only 22 square metres of development yield available. And then the setback requirements on the ninth and 10th storeys results in zero development potential at all. Based on our analysis of the subject site, this would only allow development of up to 4 storeys in lieu of the 10 storeys proposed by the structure plan. We don't have any opposition to the proposed height in the structure plan. Whilst an outcome where the Station Street property could possibly be amalgamated with the adjoining property, this may not be possible in the future with the recent application on Lot 50 and Lot 35 next door, which proposes a 15 to 18 storey mixed-use development. Regardless of this outcome, the development at Station Street property should be able to achieve the development potential proposed by the structure plan. All we're asking is to have an outcome for this site in its own right. The site is in a prime location immediately opposite the train station. The site should be a landmark site in the structure plan, and development of the site should be encouraged as such to provide a physical presence through heightened scale and built form, taking advantage of the northern orientation of the site and proximity to essential services and public transport connections. The proposed height is appropriate, however the setback requirements make it impossible to achieve this. The outcome would of a 4-storey development next to a 15 to 18-storey development is not right. This is not an appropriate built form outcome in this location at the main entrance to the Cottesloe Village Town Centre. To resolve this issue, what we're proposing or requesting is some modifications to be made to relax the setback requirements above the 4th storey. Additionally, there should be some allowance for encroachments within the street setback areas such as balconies and terrace areas which can be heavily landscaped to provide a much more sustainable and livable outcome for future residents. In terms of our requested modifications that we're asking Council to consider ahead of advertising, these include modifying Figure 5, which is the building heights plan in the structure plan, to include the Station Street property as a landmark site. There's only one other landmark site in this town centre, and that's immediately to the north of this site. So it makes sense to have this site also as a landmark site. Our second requested modification is the minimum side and rear setbacks in Table 8 of the structure plan. It could be modified to include specific side and rear setbacks to the Station Street property only. And these setback requirements would apply to storeys 4 to 10. And it could be that the exact same setback requirements that are already within the structure plan of 3 metres to major openings, such as bedroom studies and open access walkways, 4.5 metres to major openings to habitable rooms, other than bedrooms and studies, and then 6 metres to unenclosed private outdoor spaces. And our last requested modification is to modify the primary and secondary street setbacks above the podium to allow encroachments of balconies and terrace areas. In closing, we confirm our client is not fully supportive with the structure plan in its current form. We request multiple changes to be made that would affect the development of the Forest Street properties as well as the Station Street property. We ask that these modifications are considered prior to advertising. Thank you for your time this evening and happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. I'm sure you can take your seat if you like. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm sure that you're aware of the process, but for the benefit of members of the community here, this item has not been called up for debate this evening, so that means that it is likely to be passed in the terms of the officer's recommendation. What we're being asked to do tonight is to decide whether to accept the draft precinct plan or the draft scheme amendment for advertising and the precinct plan and to initiate that scheme amendment. The scheme amendment has to go to WAPC for their approval and WAPC have indicated that they would want us to be advertising both the scheme amendment and the precinct plan at the same time. So once it is approved by WAPC, we will advertise it. The advertising period is 42 days minimum and calling for public submissions. What I imagine that the points that you're making, that you've made this evening, Mr. Stewart, would be the subject of a submission, and all of those points can be considered by the town's planners and perhaps also by the steering committee, which is a collaboration between the town of Cottesloe and the Shire of Peppermint Grove, and they will be considered and submissions made will be brought back to council before we move forward. So although the item is likely to go through in terms of the officer's recommendation this evening, this is to sort of start the process of getting public input. So thank you very much for the points that you've made. So I'm now going to move that the order of business be changed by considering item 10.1.5 to be followed by item 10.1.4. Sorry, we better go through actually. Okay. Sorry, first of all, we're going to sort out which ones have been called up for debate, and the ones that haven't been called up for debate get passed en bloc, which means they get passed in one motion in the terms of the officer's recommendation. So sorry about that. If we could just find out which ones have been called up.
Through the Chair, the items that have been called up for debate, 10.1.1.3, Sculptures by the Sea funding request, and that has to be debatable. It has requires an absolute majority as well. 10.1.5, final adoption of the Town of Cottesloe local planning strategy, and items 13.1.1, 13.1.2 and 13.1.3 because they'll have been recommended to be discussed behind closed doors.
Thank you. So the items that will be put to the meeting en bloc, 10.1.1 monthly financial statements for 1 July 24 to 31 October 24, 10.1.2 monthly financial statements for the period 1 July 24 to 30th November 24, 10.1.4 consideration of the draft Cottesloe Village Precinct Structure Plan and associated local planning scheme amendment 14 for advertising, 10.1.6 coastal hazard risk management and adaptation plan public consultation, 10.1.7, council meeting dates 2025. So do I have a mover that those items be put to the meeting en bloc? Councillor Sadler, and a seconder, Councillor Thomas. All in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. So now I'd like to move, oh, well, actually I might not need to. Yeah, well, we'll do the, so that's on top, called up. I will move that we consider item 10.1.5 as the first item on the agenda. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Bullbeck. All in favour? Thank you. So we'll consider that. Final adoption of the Town of Cottesloe Local Planning Strategy. That is on page 35 with the officer's recommendation on page 49. Well, starts at the bottom of page 48. Do I have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Sadler. Do I have a seconder? I'm going to second it for the purpose of getting it on the table. Councillor Sadler, do you want to speak to the...
Look, just briefly, firstly to thank the staff for all the work they've done in the community for the consultation, and just to note that there has been broad community consultation, and I have also listened to the views of members who've come and spoken tonight, and also just to reassure any elected members who are here or listening online with regard to concern about the size of some of the subject areas that we're looking at. This is a strategy, not the local planning scheme. And so what we're looking at is areas for investigations. When you've got slightly bigger areas for investigation, it does mean that we can then address changes in density really sensitively, moving along and stepping down, rather than actually having a block area where we've got to try and cram density into a small space. So I really want to stress that this is a process that we're going through, and that we've listened to the members of the community, and that there is going to be, as I say, that process of investigation to make sure we get good design outcomes for the community. So on that note, I will, close, noting that there is an amendment coming possibly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sadler, and I will reserve my position at the moment, my right to speak later, but Councillor...
I have an amendment.
Yes, Councillor Harkins.
So my amendment is that paragraph 5 be removed from the officer's recommendation, so the entire paragraph 5 is struck out. If I have a seconder.
Councillor Sadler. Oh, you you can. Yep, sorry.
Thank
Yes.
you. Would you like me to
Yes, please.
speak to the motion? Thank you. So the officer's report does outline very sound reasons for including the site, 22 John Street, in Area F. For example, the size of the lot, the age and the condition of the existing build form, and the proximity to the foreshore. So it does have sound reason for including it in Planning Area F. And it would enable the town to manage future built form and use of this site, and may in fact reduce the likelihood of possible ad hoc rezoning being forced on the town. However, the process is the issue with this area being included in F, and I might add with the best intentions of the planning staff. The lot unfortunately was not included in the foreshore planning area F, in early community engagement, which started in around 2023, or in the draft strategy submitted to WAPC and subsequently advertised for public comment. And there are reasons why that wasn't included, so for no misdemeanour at all. And of course, we didn't receive any submissions in the public consultation process suggesting that that lot be included in Planning Area F, even though there are very good reasons. This means, of course, that the public, general public, had not had the opportunity to consider it as part of the process of developing the strategy, and for formal feedback to be included in the attachments we've got, the schedule of submissions and modifications. They weren't given that opportunity. At the agenda forum, last week we heard objections to the proposal to include it in Area 22 John Street in Area F, and that was raised by, and again of course tonight, by members of the community who were notified and are directly impacted by it. And of course we haven't heard from the broader community about including it. So because of these circumstances, not because of the reasons, it's just the process, council could restart the process, as we've heard tonight, by advertising an amended strategy and consider submissions. However, that means going right the way back and restarting the process. And of course, that would result in a further delay in finalising the strategy, which in turn will delay the development of our new planning scheme for the entire district. Although this site, 22 John Street, is certainly a significant land holding in our town, in the context of the overall local planning strategy, it certainly doesn't warrant holding up the development of our new contemporary planning scheme. So accordingly, I believe council should support the request for endorsement of the draft strategy and schedule of submissions and modifications without the proposed request to include 22 John Street in Area F. And I would urge you to support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harkins. Councillor Sadler, as the seconder, do you want to speak to that?
Just briefly to add, in support of Councillor Harkins, that the administration's got a balancing act. They've had new information brought to them, highlighting something which wasn't initially there. And so then their role is actually, I think, to draw that to the attention of elected members, and I would thank the administration for doing that. And then the councillors have got another balancing act, which is actually, along with the administration, to consider process versus outcomes. And at the moment, I think that really what we need to look at is follow good process. That builds trust in the community, that they have confidence that we steer things slowly and carefully, and that they will be consulted, and that we don't do a quick 180. So, although, as I say, I think that that's the reason I'm supporting the amendment, I do actually think that the right thing was done by the administration in bringing us to the councillors' attention, so that we could actually weigh up the relative merits. And I think that on the balance, that the best thing to do is to remove this site and not include it in planning area F. And I would urge people to support Councillor Harkins' amendment for that reason. Thank you.
Does anyone want to speak against this amendment? Councillor Bulbeck?
Yeah, I want to ask a question, if I may, through the chair, in relation to the amendment, and that is, is there any difference in the likelihood of the beautiful old trees on this lot being removed if it's if it goes into the LPS, or if it's taken out of the LPS?
Through the chair, my understanding is this has no impact on the trees, either having it in or taking it out. I'm happy to hand over to the planning staff, but my understanding is this amendment would have no impact in regards to the trees.
Yes, through the chair, I can endorse those comments from the CEI. I don't think there's any material impact either way.
Sorry, if I can just pursue, one of the reasons I asked that is in the rationale. Councillor Harkins says it might reduce the likelihood of ad hoc rezoning being forced on the town. That was the reason I asked that. But sorry.
Okay.
Well, through the chair, council has just recently dealt with a subdivision application which would have potentially upcoded the property. Whether it's in area F or not doesn't stop that potentially happening again in the future, unless the scheme itself is changed. Changing the scheme or adopting a new scheme is going to take a while, inclusive of additional community consultation. As if the amendment was passed, this property will not be in the investigation area F, and therefore it won't be investigated with the other properties in area F as proposed in the strategy.
Or a higher zoning?
Well, we don't. All we know is that it's an area for investigation. What may result at the moment is speculative until we do the investigation.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone want to speak against Councillor Harkins' amendment? I'll put the amendment to the vote. All in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. So we'll return to the substantive motion. That was moved by Councillor Sadler. Did anyone want to speak against the substantive motion? I'll put the substantive motion to the vote. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. So then just bear with me. I've got that one done. So I will turn to item 10.1.3, Sculptures by the Sea funding request on page 22. Councillor Harkins, I see your hand up there. I'll just give people the opportunity to. Thank you. Thank you. So, Councillor Harkins, you're moving the officer's recommendation on this matter.
Yes.
Do you have a seconder? I'm very happy. Oh, okay. No, well, Councillor Wilinko, your hand was up. Councillor
Yes, well, I am delighted to propose the officer's recommendation. Of course, I think everyone in the community is disappointed that Sculptures by the Sea won't be held in 2025, but we are thrilled that it has been confirmed that it will be held in Cottesloe in 2026 and 2027. And you can see the maths there that we come out in front in 2025 anyway. And I think $5,000 is a very reasonable request to keep staff ticking over in Cottesloe to support the event absolutely coming to fruition in 2026. So I think it's a very good compromise and a good outcome for Cottesloe. So I would encourage everyone to support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Wilinko?
I have nothing to add. That sounds good.
Does anyone want to vote against the officer's recommendation? I'll put that to the vote then. All in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. So now I think we are moving to the part of the meeting which has been recommended be considered in a closed meeting. 13.1.1 CUGO Recruitment Advisory Committee appointment of independent person. That and the reason for.
Through the chair, the three items have been recommended for to be dealt with behind closed doors. 13.1.1 has been recommended as it deals with information relating to the personal affairs of a person. 13.1.2 has been recommended to go behind closed doors as it contains information relating to a matter affecting an employee or employees. And 13.1.3, this item contains information that relates to potentially a contract to be entered into or may be entered into by the local government, and a matter discussed in the meeting, if disclosed, would reveal information of a commercial value to a person.
Thank you. So do I have a mover that these items be considered in closed meeting?
Excuse me, Matthew, can you just introduce Fiona and why she's staying?
Through the chair, actually, Fiona, you can't stay if you're in the public gallery.
Yeah.
So.
Can I just take the opportunity, if anybody has not met Fiona, CEO can introduce.
Sorry, this is Fiona Key. She's our Manager of People and Culture, so effectively manages the HR function for the town.
Nice to meet you. Because it's a closed meeting and she doesn't have a formal role.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no. Fiona's with us, but...
She's with us, but she's just observing the meeting for personal information.
So you're staying for afterwards so we can meet you?
Yeah. This should
Fiona,
be dealt with really quickly.
This will be quick.
I don't think it'll be long. You can go and put the kettle on. No, open the wine.
Through the chair, just so that we don't have staff coming in, could I suggest we do 13.1.3 so the staff can stay, and then after that, 13.1.1 and 13.1.2, staff can leave, prepare the Mayor's Parlour, and
that sounds great. Do I have a mover that we close the meeting? Councillor Thomas, the seconder, Councillor Sadler, all in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. So 13.1.3, Seaview Golf Club. and let me know when we're back on, please. Okay, thank you. Welcome back. In the closed section of the meeting, the following resolutions were passed. In respect of item 13.1.1, CEO Recruitment Advisory Committee, appointment of independent person. The resolution of council is that council appoint Mr Stephen Cole as the independent person to the CEO Recruitment Committee. Item 13.1.2, CEO Job Description Form, JDF, and Advertising Methodology. Council's resolution was that Council 1, by absolute majority, adopt the attached CEO Job Description Form, JDF, final for advertising. 2, disclose the adopted JDF once advertising commences. And 3, endorse the advertisement for the Chief Executive Officer recruitment via A, social media, on the town's website and other platforms as set out in the attached advertising methodology document. B, the West Australian newspaper professional appointment section, 10 centimetres by 3 columns. C, the Post newspaper. And D, local government professionals. So that one was passed. Item 13.1.3, Seaview Golf Club lease renewal update. The resolution that was passed in respect of that item is that Council 1 notes the progress to date and defers finalising a draft lease until outstanding matters relating to the Seaview Golf Course are either resolved or significantly advanced. And 2, instructs the Chief Executive Officer to continue to collaborate with the Seaview Golf Club on these outstanding matters and provide quarterly progress updates to Council via the CEO quarterly report. That is the end of the business on this evening's meeting on agenda, so I declare the meeting closed at 7:07 and wish everyone a fantastic Christmas and holiday season. Well deserved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.